Slot machines are fun. Slot machines, I go to a casino, that's my favorite thing to play because it's dumb and it's easy and it's cheap. And you can always see yourself get a little bit closer, and every once in a while you do win. But it's that idea that you feel like you have control. It's a slot machine. You don't. It's completely random. There's no gambler's fallacy in play. You're not going to eventually put enough money in to get the jackpot. Every roll is different. It's always reset back to zero, back to whatever, like 1 in 800 million chance to win the jackpot, right? But it feels like you're getting closer. It feels like you have a chance. And that's really, I think, what matters. It's that idea that it feels like you have, like could get something. Where now, personal loot doesn't feel like anything. You're just like, oh, nothing again. Okay, fuck it. And so now, and you get these people that, because the game requires no personal interaction, they never learn these personal skills, and a lot of them probably are younger. And people are like, well, fuck them. I'm like, quit being a grumpy 31-year-old. You should have stopped playing this game a long time ago, like I should have. It's a video game. It's naturally going to appeal to kids, and I think that's another important thing that's worth remembering, because I think a lot of the older people kind of, we've been playing this game for 15 years now. We started as shitty 15-year-olds and don't remember it because you don't realize it when you're a shitty 15-year-old. And I think, again, that's important to remember. So, and I think when you're going to have a game, again, that has these, that does, well, I don't want to word this. When you have a game that opens itself up to these social interactions and makes them very easy to have, now, this, again, is versus a game like, say, Hearthstone. You can't talk to your opponent in Hearthstone. You can use those little emotes, but that's it. So, again, Hearthstone doesn't need... I don't feel a game like Hearthstone should feel the need to create an environment that teaches people how to interact with people, because you can't really interact with people. They've kind of said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go down that road. That's just going to open up a big old can of worms, and I agree. I think it was a good decision. There's going to be too many people bitching, moaning, crying, complaining, yelling, screaming as they lose a match of Hearthstone. So they said, fuck it, we're not going to let you talk to one another. Not directly, not in the game. If you want to get you to circumvent that with something else, do you, but we're not going to be reliable. Or we're not going to be liable for any kind of social interaction that may happen. WoW can't say that. The ability to talk to players is one-on-one. You can whisper them, you can slash yell at them, you can, talk to them in party. You can communicate you can send them a letter in the mail like a weirdo. You have lots of options to get in touch with other players and use your own words exactly how you would like to and how you intend to. And that said, again, I feel Blizzard and game developers in general that create these MMOs that allow this, I feel that they should have some sense of obligation to help teach the player base how to interact. And they could say, well, it's not their job. They're not their parents. No, they're not. But they're also opening these people up to this open world where they have to deal with other people. Have to and are going to deal with other people. And again, we're not talking about etiquette lessons and lessons in manners in the game, but it is also teaching people that more than the fucking loading screen quips at the bottom too. There is that one, if you're nice to people, they'll invite you back, man. No, I think you want to create an environment where eventually they will need to communicate. Again, endgame still requires communication, at least at some point. Maybe definitely not looking for raid, maybe in regular raids, and probably heroic and up, definitely. But I think by making the rest of the game so straightforward, simple, and easy, and streamlined and accessible, I think accessible will be the final nail in the coffin for WoW. At the end, I think that's what Classic is going to really shine a light on, is how bad the concept of accessibility is to the lifespan, duration, and quality of a game like World of Warcraft. That's for a different day. But when you make the game really accessible, simple, and easy, what happens is it removes the necessity for interaction early on. And now people don't learn how to be in a group with strangers in a game early on, and then they only get it towards the end, and then they're just the worst. Because there's not a lot of room for learning once you've hit the end game and you're trying to heroic raid and you just can't be a reasonable adult. Or just a reasonable person. Not have to be a reasonable adult. Just, be, not a total dipshit. Because there's less time for that. And then you're also going to go, all these raiders are assholes. And that's, I think, you get a lot of, get people, you go to the general forums and like, mythic raiders are elitist assholes. And I'm like, did you join a mythic raiding group and be a total twat about it, and then they told you to fuck off and kicked you out of the group? Because I'm betting that's what happened. Because you never learned how to interact in a group, especially like an organized group, which is required for mythic raiding. Because again, dungeons used to be hard. Leveling dungeons used to be hard. You used to have to communicate on, fucking level 25 mans. Dead mines was some shit back in the day. The ability to fuck up dead mines was huge. And if you didn't know what you were doing and didn't communicate, you were going to have a real bad fucking 3 hours getting through that son of a bitch. And so again, you had to talk. The loot, again, the whole point of this video, loot, is, the idea of need, greed, rolling, and how all that would interact. That was from square one. That was from level 10 moving forward. When you first did Ragefire Chasm as a Horde player, or I think it was Dead Mines for Alliance was the earliest dungeon you could get into. Dead Mines or Stockades, I can't remember which one came first. Or then Wailing Caverns for Horde. Like, it's, when you first got, very early on, you got exposed to this loot system that, would expose you to the interactions of the roles and whether or not, it was worth it to ask people, like, look, this is a huge upgrade for me. Can, guys let me have it, please? And just basic communication skills. So you got it from basically square one, and once you got out of your starting zone killing boars, you learned how to be a person, or you didn't have a very good time in the game. Or now, you could go the entire leveling experience and never once talk to another player. Like, it doesn't come up, even as something you may want to do. It's not something that's, like, secondarily beneficial. Like, say, mob tagging, where you can say, look, we're kill stealing from each other. You want to group up real quick and just, knock this bitch out and then go our separate ways? Sure. And so I think really the point that I'm trying to make is that there's that this lack of teachable communication skills in the game is really the detrimental part. I think the loot system shines a big spotlight on it because of, like I said, the futility and the unfairness of the current loot system and how it feels. Not because I think personal loot is more fair than you could ever imagine, because it completely removes all variables. Either you get it or you don't. Done. It's decided automatically by an uncaring, heartless computer. Like, the algorithm doesn't give a shit. Either you're going to get that gear or you're not going to get the gear. It don't care. So it's as fair as it can possibly be. But sometimes being completely fair isn't fair, because what's fair sometimes is that, look, that's a 5-level upgrade for you, but it's a 50 for me. It's 10 times more. I should get it, right? Like, that's more fair. And again, this is a semantics argument that you could go back and forth all day because it's all subjective. But again, I feel that the fact that the argument could be had is better than the fact that there's no argument to be had at all. And again, that goes back to not just the social interaction, but again, the freedom of players to manipulate the game how they see fit. Again, change the loot system. Do round robin, do master loot, keep it on need greed. And then because the interactions are deeper, because the game isn't doing everything for you, it teaches you these social skills. And these social skills become very, integral to progressing in the game down the road. And into making, people into better players. If you want to, put it into game terms, the early exposure to some of these systems was ostensibly the attunement to the end game, because it taught you how to be a person in the game. And so that was the attunement, that was the required grind in order to get to the point where you could actually begin to think about doing the end game. And I think that's important, and I think there is an obligation on the developmental side that if you're going to create a world where players can literally yell at one another, whisper, and ostensibly harass in a lot of ways, should they so choose, I feel that there should be some obligation to help educate new players on what is and is not acceptable behavior in the game. Because a lot of people might say, well, this is a fantasy game. I'm role-playing as a dickhead. Oh, okay. But they can do that. So I think, it would behoove Blizzard to feel this obligation to teach people how to interact with other people, especially when the interactions still eventually come. And I guess maybe from there, and they could say, well, if you're not good in groups, just do LFR. And, yeah, there we are. But I think the game should, aspire to be more than just the LFR roller coaster. I think endgame content should be something people want to do again, which I think right now a lot of people don't. And I think this also goes back to the whole looting system, because you're fucking grinding out mythic raids, bleeding edge, cutting edge, whatever you want to call it. And, the gods of loot just don't want to give you anything. You're going to go, well, fuck it, why do I bother?